Today on CityCast Philly, it's the Friday News Roundup. We're talking about plans to move the intercity bus terminal again and which companies in our area have a 4-day work week. It's Friday, March 22nd. I'm Trenae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Joining me this week is Mira Rindy, investigative reporter at Billy Penn. Welcome back to CityCast Philly.
Hey, Trenae, it's great to be here.
Yes. And Lizzie McLellan-Ravitch, workplace reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Glad to see you again.
Good to be back.
Okay, before we get into the news of the week, for today's icebreaker, the Pennsylvania Lottery had to update its computer system this week, which meant no one in the state could buy a lottery ticket. Now, the system is back up and running again. So let's close our eyes, you with me, and let's imagine we're holding the winning Mega Millions ticket. How are you spending that jackpot?
Wow, this is one of those fantasies, those things you think about before you fall asleep at night. I do not play the lottery, but I'd certainly pay off my house, give gifts to family and friends, go on probably around the world trip. Might do a little bit less work at WHYY. I'm sure I wouldn't have a hard time finding ways to spend that money.
How about for you, Lizzie?
Yeah, I think I have a similar answer, right? I definitely pay off any debt I've got and make some, gifts and charitable donations. I'll throw out there that I would fund some journalism startups. Why not, right?
I like that. Yeah.
Get some journalism going with that money. And then I'd probably travel too. I got to go see the world and get out of this very cold, March weather that we're having this week.
For sure. Yeah, I'm with you, Mir. I don't play the lottery like maybe other Pennsylvanians. I've tried a few times. I'm just like, it's not my thing. I'm not winning. I'm not lucky. But yes, I would get a car, a house, setting up some college funds for the kids. And I think I would get season tickets to every sports team that we have. Phillies, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, Union, and the Wings. Why not?
The best seats, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, those sweet box seats, exactly.
Yes, so come on with me. Okay, let's get into the news of the week. Mir, we're going to start with you. There's a plan floating around that the city could move the intercity bus terminal again, where carriers like Greyhound and Megabus drop off and pick up passengers. Can you tell us what we know so far about this plan?
Yeah, this was a little bit of a surprise. The city, it turns out, or some city officials are working on this new plan. They say it's very early stages. It might not happen, but it's starting to be written down. There is some written details now where they would have the buses, instead of picking and dropping people off on Spring Garden Street, just on the curb, which they've been doing for the past 4 months and which has gotten a lot of complaints, they would take a parking lot that's just across the street from that location and turn that into kind of a semi-permanent bus terminal with like trailers that at least are indoor space for people to wait, and bathrooms and a ticket office and so on. So it would get all that off the street at least. That's the idea.
Okay, so this is that parking lot next to the Luke Oil gas station that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's Spring Garden and Front Street, and it's next to the gas station there. It's being used as a parking lot now. It's privately owned, but the developer apparently is interested or amenable to the idea of the city leasing the lot from him and doing some construction there and so on to use it as a bus stop or a bus depot.
Interesting. So let's actually go back in time. Let's remind our listeners why this is a big deal.
Yeah, the city's main bus stop for more than 3 decades was on Filbert Street in Center City, basically next to Chinatown. It was a Greyhound station, and the other bus carriers used it as well. It was there forever, but Greyhound was purchased by another company, and the new owners I guess, decided that they didn't want the cost of operating fixed brick and mortar bus stations. Also, that land is valuable. It's in Center City. And in fact, that could be part of the new arena complex that's been proposed. And so all over the country, they've been selling off their bus stations and just having the buses pick people up on the street, which other carriers have already done. Megabus and so on have been doing for years. So they just did it. It took a lot of people by surprise last summer. They started
Right.
picking up from Market Street, which caused all kinds of problems. There was no bathrooms there. It disrupted businesses. It disrupted SEPTA. So then they moved it again. The city moved it again and told them they should pick up from this spot on Spring Garden Street.
Okay, so let's go back to this proposed site. Who would manage this bus terminal?
Well, that's another interesting part of it. It would be the Philadelphia Parking Authority, which usually is not involved in buses. Now, they certainly are involved in managing vehicles. They manage garages and on-street parking, metered parking. They give out parking tickets. But this would be, as far as I can tell, a new thing for them. And it just happened that, as I understand it, there's a member of a neighborhood association up there, Jeff Hornstein in Northern Liberties, who came up with this idea, talked to the property owner, and talked to the head of the parking authority, Rich Laser, who he happens to know. And Rich Laser said, sure, I'd love to be involved in this. So it came together in a kind of unusual way. And it looks like the parking authority wants to actually run the bus stop.
Now, what do we not know about this plan?
There's a lot we don't know. For one thing, the
Right.
plans are very provisional. All we've seen is a little sketch. They sort of took a Google map image and drew some arrows on it. So that's about it as far as sketches go. And there's a few written details, but there's been no public hearings or anything. Don't know how much it'll cost. We don't know if the bus carriers will be expected to contribute. They probably don't want to pay any more money than they have to run their bus services. And in a sense, they have the upper hand on this because the city wants to maintain bus service. And so it remains to be seen if the city can get them to pay for some of it. And if not, then where does the money come from? So there's a lot yet still unknown about this very provisional idea or plan.
Mayor, have you heard from passengers about what they think about this plan?
When I've interviewed passengers in the past or people waiting on Spring Garden Street, a lot of people are very critical. They say, why do we continue to have this sort of substandard bus station situation? It's incredible that there's nowhere to wait, really. There are no benches. There's no covered area. There's no indoor area. For a while, there was no bathroom. Actually, there is a small ticket office on Spring Garden Street, but most people didn't even know it was there where you could wait inside. So they say this is really not fair to people who depend, especially a lot of low-income people who depend on long-distance buses to get around. So there's a pretty negative reaction, as well as from people in Northern Liberties who are like, why are we saddled with this sort of semi-permanent bus station? There's definitely recognition of the need for something like this, but a lot of controversy about how it is being designed.
Interesting. Any idea when we would know if the city will move forward with this plan?
It's interesting. It seems to be on a very tight timeline. I was told that they're thinking of setting it up by this summer. So that's just 3-4 months away. So I suppose we'd have to learn very soon if they're actually going to go ahead with it or not, but it's unclear.
All right, you can read Mayor's full story by clicking the link in our show notes. More news of the week after the break. This is CityCast Philly. Lizzie, I love the headline for your story. Thank God it's Thursday. And even though today is Friday, your story really focused on this idea that many people in the corporate world have been hoping for, advocating for, testing to see if it works. A 4-day work week, Monday through Thursday. And some companies in our area are doing just that. Who's giving their workers Fridays off?
Yeah, so there are some companies doing this. Some have been doing it for several years and some more recently. One that a lot of people in the area have probably heard of the company is Insomnia Cookies. They recently went to a 4-day work week in January when they opened up their new headquarters. And that's for their roughly 100 corporate headquarters employees. And a couple other companies that are doing this are a little smaller. Metropolitan Acoustics is a consulting firm in the city that is in the experimental stage, kind of transitioning toward this. And one other is Philly Marketing Labs, and they've been doing this for several years. So it was interesting to hear all their reasons for doing this. And one kind of common thread they all mentioned was this idea that maybe we don't actually need 40 hours in a week to get all of our work done. And maybe we can fit that into 32, and people will be a lot happier if they can have one day to get all their errands done, or maybe pursue some hobbies, spend time with their families, in addition to the Saturday and Sunday that most people are used to.
Yeah, get an extra day to do some errands. Okay, now, Lizzie, from an employee's perspective, are 4-day work weeks better for their lifestyle?
I'm sure you'd have to talk to different people and see what their tastes are, right? I've definitely spoken with a couple people here and there who had trouble imagining doing their job this way, but I've also spoken with some others who said it was just so much better a fit that they eliminated some wasted time during their work week because they felt motivated to get everything done by the end of the day Thursday. One of the people I spoke with for this story, Julian at Metropolitan Acoustics, was the tester of this policy for the company and said, I actually am more motivated to come to the office now. I am more motivated to say, go to a networking event on a Thursday night that's beneficial to my work, because I know the next day I'm going to have some time to go do something I love
And sleep in.
and sleep in.
Now, I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but what's not working with the idea of a 4-day work week?
So the people I spoke to who are doing it didn't highlight anything that wasn't working, because obviously they've made it work for them, right? What I've heard in terms of any hesitation about putting this kind of policy in place is that, of course, there are some jobs that you have to have people available 7 days a week, let alone 5. And they just haven't set up the systems yet to be able to do that work on a condensed schedule. And the people I spoke with who have put this kind of policy in place even said the same, that you have to have a system that fits the company or fits the organization. And that seems to be the biggest hurdle in this, is just each individual reworking their routine from Monday to Friday so that they can fit all the work in.
Now, I'm wondering what happens when there's a national holiday on a Monday. That becomes a 3-day work week.
Yeah, I asked that question of these companies. I was like, okay, well, what about Labor Day week or Memorial Day week? Do you work on Fridays that week? And they said no. So,
All
yeah, then
right.
you really got to crunch it all in there.
I'm wondering if there are places where employees would be interested in taking a pay cut in order to go down to a 4-day work week. And then maybe the company could hire more people with that money to take over the open days, something like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. And I'm sure that's an individual, taste thing. It was something I thought was interesting about these companies I spoke with, is that they didn't cut pay to make this work. They cut the hours and they made the work fit in, but they didn't reduce salaries. And I'd imagine it would be hard to get everybody on board, 100% into this model if you did have to cut salaries, because everyone's got a different financial situation.
Okay, Lizzie, we've been talking about individual companies that are in our area so far. Is anyone trying to make a 4-day work week happen on a national scale?
Yeah, actually, and there have been some other big ideas put out there. Senator Bernie Sanders introduced a bill last week that would reduce the work week across the U.S. to 32 hours as a standard. That, I think, from a legislative standpoint, would have a long way to go, but it's interesting to see it popping up in the lawmaking space. And Bill Gates suggested last year that with AI coming up, maybe instead of throwing more work on people and cutting jobs, instead people could have shorter work weeks. he suggested even as low as 3 days by supplementing their tasks with AI technology.
You can read Lizzie's full story by clicking the link in our show notes. All right, that was Lizzie McLellan-Ravitch, workplace reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Mir Rundy, investigative reporter at Billy Penn. Thank you both so much for joining me this week on CityCast Philly.
Thanks for having me, Trinae.
Thanks, Trinae. It was fun to be on again.
It's time for the tip of the week, where we share a life hack for living in Philly. As we approach primary election day on Tuesday, April 23rd, the city is actually in need of some more poll workers. According to Billy Penn, there's over 1,700 voting precincts around the city that need to be set up by 7 a.m. Poll workers also greet voters and check them in, give instructions on how to use the voting machines, and hand out those I voted stickers. For more information on how you can get involved and some upcoming virtual information sessions, check out the links in our show notes. If you have a tip of the week, we'd love to hear from you too. Call or text us at 215-259-8170. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Our executive producer is Laura Benchoff. Our producers are Abby Fritz and Noah Snyderman. Our Hey Philly newsletter editor is Asha Prahar. And our host is me, Trinae Nuri. Music is by Philly's own Interminable, with additional music from All the Kimonos and James Weldon. If you enjoyed this week of shows, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and make sure you subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Philly. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend and be safe, y'all. Bye.